we do construction and service work. So we'll show up to somebody's house and fix stuff or add stuff, but we'll also do construction projects. Yeah, those general contractors, I mean, you're talking 20 trades, possibly they're coordinating. And when one of them doesn't show up on time, then our whole schedule is impacted too. So everybody else, there's a ripple effect. So people don't, I think, realize how complex that is.
Welcome to the Regenhard Report, where we bring on the most influential people in town to tell their stories. So today we have Jacob Andersen. Jacob, who are you?
Thanks for having me on, Andrew. It's a pleasure. So, as you said, the name is Jacob Andersen. I spent about 12 years in the military as an F-15 fighter pilot. And then, long story, which I'm sure we'll get into, but I transitioned out into the business world. And so now my wife, Melissa, and I, and my 2 kids, we live here in Naples. We own Co-Harbor Electric, and we're just enjoying finally getting into the cool season here.
Oh my gosh, it's so nice.
Looking forward to it.
The mornings is like brisk and it's perfect, right?
Yeah, right.
So, well, good. So tell me, what you're a fighter pilot, right? Obviously, my experience with aviation, being a pilot as well, something we have in common. But you flew a lot more badass aircrafts than me. So what aircraft did you mostly fly?
Yeah, so I flew the F-15E Strike Eagle. So people know when I say two-person fighter jet, they kind of know because they've seen Top Gun.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I would sit in front as a pilot, and then I had a weapon systems officer in the back seat. Awesome. So it's a twin engine, Mach 2 plus jet. So does both air to air and air to ground. So I had plenty of opportunities to deploy overseas and really get to work.
So from a kid, did you just I want to be a pilot? Or I knew I took an introduction flight when I was super young. My dad was like, hey, you should test it out, see if you like it. And I was hooked. So what was your transition? How'd you get into it?
So I grew up in Idaho. I was a poor farm boy moving sprinkler pipe.
Okay.
Driving tractors, right? Driving cattle, the whole 9 yards. And that was basically how I grew up. I didn't really want to be a fighter pilot, like most people that I flew with. Yeah. It's since they were 3 or 4 years old, multi-generational fighter pilot. Not me. I was 17 years old. Right. First, I wanted to be a sniper in the Army.
Okay.
Thank God my dad talked me out of that one. Although that is very cool.
And you're like, oh, I want to do that, right?
Right, right.
They're the farthest away from the front line, and they have the scopes that can go the farthest. Perfect. I want to do that. Right?
All comes down to the coolest movies, right?
Exactly.
But my dad actually had a physics teacher in high school, and he was a fighter pilot.
Really?
And honestly, I made the decision probably within 30 minutes. That's what I wanted to do. Why? No idea. But I was 17. I decided I want to be a fighter pilot. Did not know a pilot. Did not know anything about aviation.
Okay.
But what I did know is that I know how to search the internet.
Yeah.
Right then it was Yahoo, not Google. I got on Yahoo and I literally typed in how to become a fighter pilot. And then I was like, okay, I got to go to college, step 1.
Yeah.
And then a lot of other things. But yeah, then I just followed the process. Yeah. Made it happen.
So cool. So where'd you go to college?
Utah State University.
Awesome.
Yeah. Close to home. It was 3 hours away from where I grew up.
Yeah.
And they had a high acceptance rate to pilot training because when you either go to the Air Force Academy for 4 years and they have officer training school, and then you've got ROTC, go to normal college. So I went to Utah State University. They had almost 100% acceptance rate to pilot training. Wow. So I was like, bam, that's the school I want to go to.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's funny that you make that decision. I remember the decision for me when I was I'm going to school to become a pilot was sitting in the back of a normal commercial airplane, right? And my parents were actually on vacation, but they did 2 weeks, and I couldn't leave 2 weeks of school or whatever. So I was doing the unaccompanied minor thing, where you get on the plane and they watch you, and then your parents pick you up on the other side. Yeah. And I was sitting in the back, and I just remember, I just don't want to be in the back. The front is a way better view. I want to be in the very front with the pilot. And since then, you know how every single time, kids or whoever, right? They're like, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I'm like, and you freeze, and you're like, "You got to tell them something." I'm like, "A pilot, pilot." And I just kept saying that. Since then, I was like, "All right, let's do it." And then,
how old were you then?
I was 10, probably 10 or 12, somewhere in there, when I kind of started that decision, and then really like obviously once I flew for the first time, which I think I was 16 was my discovery flight. And said, hey, let's go for an hour. It's a discovery flight. See if you even enjoy it. Make sure you don't throw up the whole time. Right. And, right. I absolutely loved it and was hooked then. So went to UND and obviously the rest is history.
Funny enough, I actually threw up a lot.
Really?
In pilot training. Yeah. My first 3 flights, is it the T-37 Tweet? Have you seen that one? You sit side by side instead of front and back.
Oh.
And that actually makes you ridiculously ill when you fly like that. Because if you're doing loops and barrel rolls and stuff like that, you're off the center of axis.
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah. So my first 3 flights, I basically threw up the entire time. So I was like, this is off to a bad start. But
I hated it when I was instructing and like the student would be like, I'm not feeling well. Oh God, here's the barf bag. And you're just trapped. Like we're teaching, instructing in Cessnas and stuff. And it's like, you're right there and I can't smell or see it. Otherwise I want to throw out. It's the worst. I was like, I don't know.
Probably when you're doing spin training.
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
I didn't have to do the spin training. Thank God. Like I did it, but I wasn't the instructor on the spin training. Yeah. And I was like, thank God, because that's not for me.
It's not fun.
I actually had an experience to be able to fly a fighter jet, which was so cool. And it because obviously as a civilian, I mean, I did contract work, but that's not what we were flying. And I had the opportunity. It was an L-39.
Oh yeah, very familiar.
So for people that don't know, an L-39, it's a Czechoslovakian trainer jet, is really what it is. And same thing, tandem seating. Yeah. And I was in Texas, and long story short, the gentleman that bought my parents' old home, we discovered he's pilot on pilot, and he's like, hey, you want to go fly? And when someone says, hey, you want to go flying, you don't it's like someone saying you want to, go out on the boat. You don't say like, what is the boat? Is it big enough? Is it, you know what I mean? You're just like, I appreciate the gesture. Yes. Like I would like to go. And he's like, I'm going to take up my fun aircraft. And at that point I'm like, you have multiple aircrafts, right?
A fun one.
You have a fun one, right? And I was like, okay. And he's like, have you ever been in an L-39 at that point, Jacob? I was like, no, but I want to. And one of the coolest experience. And same, we went up barrel rolls and all that stuff. And I was just like,
if you own an L-39, you got some cash to burn because those things are not cheap to operate.
Yeah. No.
How long was the flight? Like probably about 1.5 hours or an hour?
It was really only about an hour long.
Yeah.
Because it was out of San Antonio.
Cool.
Yeah. He's got a CJ2 Plus, right? Twin, and then he's got the jet, and he's like, the jet, the operating expenses and the fuel and everything is so bad compared to the other one.
Maintenance, try to find parts for a Czechoslovakian, trainer.
He said like the little glass thing, if you just actually push the little button, it's a $40,000 mistake because it like pops the little things. And he's like, just be careful where you step. I'm like, now I'm, pins and needles. But anyways, it was an amazing experience. So do you fly at all anymore?
So right now, no, I'm just too busy, not that I don't want to, I miss it for sure.
Yeah.
But, I'm super focused in life. So when I was a fighter pilot, that was what I was doing. And I climbed the ranks as fast and as well as I could.
Yeah.
Now my job is business owner, to take care of the services we do, our people. And so I'm just super focused on that right now. Yeah. So really trying to just minimize distractions at this point, but in the future, couple good airports here.
Yeah. So when did you get out, and what was the big push to getting out of the military?
Yeah. So I flew, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in 2004. Mm-hmm. When I got out, it was the end of 2015.
Okay.
And really at that point, I went to pilot training, graduated number 1 in my class. The benefit of that is you get to actually pick what you want to fly.
That's awesome.
So generally the top guy, halfway through, they determine who's going to go bombers and fighters, and then who will go heavy aircraft.
Okay.
So there's a selection process 6 months through, and then the next 6 months, then you're competing for the aircraft you're going to get. And ultimately, you don't know until they do a drop night where you're in front of everybody in the entire base, and they put a flash thing up on screen what you're going to fly for the rest of your career. And you're kind of stuck in that, to be honest. It's rare to change airframes in the Air Force. You can when airframes are transitioning and changing. Yeah, but I did a year of that and got the F-15E Strike Eagle. That's what I wanted to fly. I wanted to fly the F-16. And then I talked with the Strike Eagle pilot,
Right.
And he
Talked
said,
you out of it.
he said, you know what? If we go into a conflict, you'll be the first to go, and it's going to be some exciting stuff. So I said, you know what?
Done.
Sounds like a good deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Sign me up. Right?
Traded in the single engine jet for the 2-engine jet.
Yeah.
And then went off. Rose from the ranks of a wingman to 2-ship flight lead, 4-ship flight lead. So you can lead basically a combat mission with 3 other aircraft that are following you.
Yeah.
And then I was an instructor, flight evaluator, the whole 9 yards. So when I got out, I was an FTU instructor. That basically means that you're teaching brand new Air Force pilots how to fly the F-15 for the first time. So they're there for a year, and then when they leave, they go off to their combat squadron. Okay. So when I got out, that was my job.
Yeah.
To be honest, if you can believe it or not, I was very bored with that because done the whole thing. I could do everything in the front seat, everything in the back seat. There was nothing new, and I was just training people. But I actually had a ruptured disc.
But it is boring. I will piggyback on that.
Training?
Yeah, training can be boring. It's rewarding when your pilot, or your student gets to that level and achieves it, and you're like, yes, way to go. But it's repetitive and it's boring. And
it's boring with spikes of uncertainty and fear of death. That's really what it came down to, right?
I remember
it'd be boring until it wasn't.
I still remember the airport and exactly where we were, the approach, and my student, commercial pilot, right? Like, he's already gone through the ranks, and we were stall warning horn, everything, almost stalled the aircraft at 50 feet on short final. And I was just like, what am I doing? Getting paid, 15, 20, whatever it was at the time, an hour. I'm like, not worth it. Yeah.
Just the point when you're complacent, it happens. Yeah.
I remember that. So you transition out. Now, question on that is, are all your did all your certificates, all your licenses carry just straight over then? Is that how it works?
It does. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I've got my commercial instrument, private pilot license, multi-engine, all that.
Ever think about helicopter?
I have. I think it would be fun.
It'd be fun.
If I didn't have a job, I could learn how to fly. That'd be great.
Those are
if I had the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But the big reason getting out was we fly with this. It's a helmet-mounted cueing system. Think a heads-up display on your visor.
Okay.
And basically, that's pretty heavy. I've got 1,700 hours in the F-15. So over that many years, all the G-forces had compounded, and it ruptured a disc in my neck.
Oh,
so
man.
It was basically, I finally called Uncle.
Yeah.
And, the flight doc says, hey, if we, do an X-ray on you, this is going to end it, right? And I was finally at the point where I said, yes, I'm ready, because I just can't deal with it anymore.
There's so much pain.
Yeah, so they put an artificial disc in there. So they didn't fuse it together, an artificial disc, and that kind of ends your flying career.
Yeah.
So then at that point, it was my pilot commitment was up. So I'd done my 10 years after pilot training. Mm-hmm. I could go do whatever I wanted to do. At that point, I was like, it's probably time to go learn something else.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, it sucks that obviously that you obviously got not fused, but not slip disc. What is it? Ruptured disc? Yeah, ruptured disc. Yeah. But it's cool that obviously it led and helped you transition too, right? So married, kids. When did Melissa get into the picture? Was it still when you were in? Or
yep, still when I was in.
Right.
I was an F-15 instructor pilot at the time. She was near Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay.
She moved to Raleigh, North Carolina for John Deere. She was a supply chain management professional for John Deere, making tractors and the such. And I think they make the PJ Tour mowers there in Fuquay Varina. That's where she was working. We met, and then after I got out, I got my MBA nights and weekends, so I was doing fighter pilot by day, 60 hours a week, and then going to school on nights and weekends until I got that MBA, which really just gave me a foundation. Okay, I have a basis to go into the business world and kind of roughly know what's going on. And then we, at that point I had gotten out and we moved to Denver. Yeah.
So you went to Denver, a couple kids now, right?
Yep. 4 and 5 year old, 2 girls. There you
go. And now you have some different businesses, right? So let's kind of talk about that. How was the transition from? I mean, you were, I guess, learning MBA through the night school, still involved, but you were like, okay, doc, I'm done. Do the X-ray, and I know it is ending, right? That's obviously a big change in your life. How was it mentally transitioning from the military to civilian?
That's very difficult to do for a lot of people because, like I said before, it's very structured. I got on Yahoo and I looked up how to become a fighter pilot. It was very clear. Every single step that I had to take. Were those steps extremely difficult? Absolutely. Right. But it was a very clearly defined path that you could take. That's basically the military, right? To rise to the top.
And
clearly defined.
It's a checklist, right?
Yeah, it's a checklist. It
Pilots
is.
love checklists,
Yes.
right? It just tells me what to do. After this, you do this.
Exactly.
SOP, right?
Right. But when you get out in the business world, there is no checklist. No. It is completely complex, confusing sometimes. And then I think a lot of guys that get out of the military, it's hard to find that direction, right? Where am I going? What's the vision I'm trying to create? And honestly, a benefit of, you kind of feel like you're behind the 8 ball, as we say in the aviation word. I'm on the backside of the power curve.
Correct, yep.
Which means it doesn't matter how much more power I go,
exactly.
I'm still sinking.
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on here, right?
Yeah.
You feel like that coming out of the military because everything was so structured. And you didn't have those years to have those failures and to really jump around, figure out exactly what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, let's say a guy in his 20s goes into the business world, he's got a good, 5-6 years to really kind of figure out what he wants. For me, that happened that first 5 years after I was out of the military.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Now, from your experience, would you recommend someone getting out of the military to jump right into, let's say, entrepreneur mindset, maybe a bit, starting a business, SBA kind of style, or do you think it's more beneficial to learn through a different company, apprentices kind of style? What do you think there?
Yeah, I think there's benefits to both paths, but I would say just like nobody gave me an F-15 right off the bat and said, you're good, go read a book about it and then go fly it, right? I had to put in a lot of hours in other airframes before that to be ready for that. So there is a huge benefit of going and being an apprentice, apprentice mindship, or mindset, if you will, to go and do that first before.
Learn.
Yeah. Go learn from somebody if you can. Now sometimes I would say minimize your risk and maximize your chances of success. And the way you do that, I got in a startup when I first got out because, once again, you're a fighter pilot. You kind of believe that you can take on the world, right?
Yeah.
And then
you're indestructible.
Then you get in the business world and you get punched in the mouth, right? And things change. But
get slapped around a little bit.
Right.
You're like, hey, usually I do the slapping around. I have this F-15 that I'm controlling. What the heck?
Right. But the day you hang up that flight suit, things change and nobody cares anymore. Right. It's so I would just say it's important to have something as structured as you can. Minimize the risk as much as possible. Right. If it was me doing it again, I'd be okay going and buying a business right away, but I'd make sure it was a small business, a small business that has a repeatable sales, kind of predictable business model that you can repeat that's existed for a long time versus I'm going to go start the next way to cure cancer, right? Yeah. So it's a sure way to probably fail unless you're extremely talented.
So how did you get, down the mindset of I want, how did Co-Harbor, come to existence, I guess?
Yeah. So the first 5 years after I was out of the military, I was in some startups that failed. I was in some ventures that succeeded. The thing that I really honed my craft on was marketing consulting. I did a lot of that, from growing small local businesses by 600% in 3 years. I did that multiple times. And then also even a medical testing lab. We spun up a new product line, and in 30 days, we're making $40,000 a month. So that's a lot of entrepreneurial type stuff inside of an actual existing company. So I kind of learned how to do that for those 5 years. Okay. When the transition at Co-Harbor it's kind of related to what I did flying. At the end of the day, I was a fighter pilot, and I was a service provider. Right?
Okay, true.
The president would call, or whoever, the Secretary of Defense, much like they did in Libya. My squadron was the first one that went into Libya in 2011.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it was literally, I'm in Ireland, in Dublin. It's St. Paddy's Day. Yeah. Hey, Captain Andersen, you need to come home for training. It's not training. Yeah. Yeah, it is. No, you just can't tell us. Yeah. So we go back to England. 24 hours later, I'm sitting on a C-17 full of F-15 jet engines heading to northern Italy. The next day, I'm flying missions into northern Africa. Wow. So, but it was a service, right? We were providing a service. Correct. Right? Yeah. The service was bombs on target on time. Mm-hmm. highly complex,
Right.
business model, right?
Yeah.
Tons involved.
A
Tanker
lot
aircraft,
of moving parts.
surveillance, reconnaissance, recovery, us, strike, everything.
Yeah.
Multiple countries. So I learned how to operate in a complex environment and to execute basically the mission, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Interesting. It kind of compares similar to what we do at Co-Harbor, right? We're electrical contractor. But if you think about it, any of these trades, it's a very complex business model, right? We have to move materials, and they got to be the right materials. Like there's thousands of parts that we deal with every single day.
Right.
You bring the wrong part, you're going back and you're starting over, right? Customer's not happy. So you got to move materials, parts, labor. You got to have the right people that are trained. They know how to be good electricians. They know how to assess and do the problem, right? And then you have to manage the whole entity. So it's a really complex business model. And basically what I'm taking my experience running, flight operations and trying to move that here into contracting in order to help out my people, to help teach them what a high performance organization looks like.
Right.
Because it's going to help them succeed in life.
Of course. Yeah. And it's a team, right?
Yeah. And
they need you and you need them.
Exactly. We're co-relying on each other. And that's the best kind of relationship, I think, because it keeps people accountable. But then also it gives the customers at the end of the day, people here in Naples, it gives them the best result.
Right.
Do we mess up? Yes, we do. Do we make it right when we do? Yes, absolutely. We try to all the time, but we're trying to constantly evolve and get better to kind of perfect that operational excellence.
Yeah, I mean, your mission is obviously to do electrical work. It's either maybe to fix what's broken or it's to, run a house or whatever it is, right? But there's so many moving parts. People don't realize that, I mean, the construction world is, very, very, very complex. And I think people forget that there is so many moving parts. So when it's the smallest little hiccup, they throw like a huge, let's say fit and get all flustered and angry. And it's like, it's not just like, here, let me throw a light bulb in here. Right. There's amperage and this and that. And it's like, there's so much going on here. You have to understand that it's not just one little thing. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. And there's a lot, the general contractors, we do construction and service work. So we'll show up to somebody's house and fix stuff or add stuff, but we'll also do construction projects. Yeah, those general contractors, I mean, you're talking 20 trades, possibly they're coordinating. And when one of them doesn't show up on time, then our whole schedule is impacted too. So everybody else, there's a ripple effect. So people don't, I think, realize how complex that is.
One aircraft a little low on fuel screws up everyone else, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you said it. The reconnaissance part, that's what we were doing, right? When I was doing contract work, we were doing the drones and
MQ-9s.
I worked with the MQ-9 when I was stateside. But when I was deployed, it was MQ-5 Bravo. It was like the Hunter system. And then I transitioned out of that to the Scan Eagle and RQ-21 Blackjack, which was
what's that?
Those are maritime based. Well, they can be maritime. They're all, they're either or. They're pretty cool. They use a launcher system, and they can be on a ship.
Is that the one that's flat? It looks like a wing.
Kind of. It looks like that. It's bigger. I know it's when you're talking about. It's a little bit bigger than that. But it's like 10 feet wingspan. So it's still small. The other one was a twin engine, 50-foot wingspan. So that was a bigger one. But this one was cool because it was a launcher. And so you could be on a ship, launch it into the wind, fly it around. Little gas engine, ran for like 20. We could get like 18 hours out of it.
Wow, that's a lot.
And then the coolest part is we had this big boom thing. And we had a differential GPS on the top. And there was a hook on the wing. And so it was a rope coming down for the differential GPS with like literally bungees. And so it'd fly into this little rope and hook on the wing and then do this little like spin thing. And that's how we capture it. So we needed no runway. We needed nothing. Like they did it off of literally like a fishing like ship before.
That's awesome.
Pretty cool stuff, And
where were you flying those out of? Like where were you sitting physically?
The big ones were out of Afghanistan, Nangarhar province, Allahabad, by Bagram, that area. And then a little bit, some of the other ones in Saudi Arabia, because then I was transitioning. At that time, I was an instructor, so we were either teaching our military, or we were teaching our allies, right? Because they would be buying, let's say a kit, and they buy 10 aircrafts, 8 GCUs, whatever. They're like, cool, we got all this stuff. We don't have pilots, so then they would send their guys and gals over. We'd teach them, or we'd do it on site through those locations. So it all depended on the contract, right? At the end of the day. So, but yeah, they weren't loaded with weapons, right? Because we were civilians. So we had we just turned it over to you guys, right? We're like, hey, there's a bad guy doing bad things. You guys do whatever you want now.
There's nothing better than filling yourself full of fuel, sitting around a bunch of fuel bags with bombs on it, and then people shooting at you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's basically what we had to do.
Yeah, ours was a little bit better, where we were just like, we're on base in a nice, AC controlled GC, like pretty much container thing, with all these screens and whatnot. And then, we lost that aircraft. Well, it's okay. We got another one in the shop here.
Yeah,
We'll
can I get another one, please?
Yeah, can we get another one? Just another stroke of a check from the government. So whatever.
Would you guys talk with the military at all?
Oh,
on the radios?
Yeah, we were on Super Nipper, everything.
Yeah,
we were direct contact. Yeah,
cool.
So with our clearances and everything, like at the end of the day, we were an extension. We were just limited to what we could do, right? But we were on the base. Like next door was, military. It was us then as a contractor from a living standpoint, eating standpoint. We had our military personnel overseeing kind of our operations, right? Our POC and different things like that. And then, we interacted all day, every day with them.
Nice.
So it's as close as obviously you can get without being in the military. It was a great experience. I would say this, I learned so much. And you probably can attest to this. Like I went from college kid to a young adult, a young man overnight. Like I remember it was like, all right, like we're flying in, and I just remember flying overseas. I was like, oh my gosh, like we're so spoiled, in America and what we have and the securities and, everything. Right.
Definitely.
And so from an eye-opening experience, it was amazing.
Yeah. I spent a year at Bagram over 2 different deployments, but they were living.
What year were you?
They were living in mud huts. I mean, I remember.
Oh yeah.
I remember we'd fly essentially the whole country.
Right.
Literally one mission, we could take off Bagram, go 3 hours to the west side with Iran, I think, is over there. Or we could be up near the other border, Pakistan. So, but we literally would fly down these valleys that I don't know if anybody has ever physically stepped foot in there that hasn't been there for like 1,000 years. And there are these mud huts in there. And I was like, I wonder if they think I'm actually a pterodactyl flying over them. Like, I don't know if do they have electricity?
They
do
don't
even know what
you give them like a battery. They think it's like, oh my God. Like, it's like unreal.
Yeah. So we are very, very blessed.
We are so blessed. And I remember I was so frustrated. I've told this story one time to a few other people, and I was so frustrated because I was internally just like worked up from the deployment and everything. I was ready to be home. I was traveling back overseas, or, the no sleep and time change and everything. Yeah. And I was just kind of like, wow, we are so lucky to be in the United States, blah, 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 all this stuff. That was my mentality. And I get to a Starbucks to just get a coffee, and there is this lady, and she's designer up, everything decked out, right? And she's screaming like at this barista person because it wasn't, a triple skinny venti. You know what I mean? Like it was some like crazy order, right? And she's so mad at this person. And I'm just in my mind, I'm like, that's what you're mad about. That's what like you're frustrated about on a day where like you're talking about these mud huts and these people that like they don't have running water, and unfortunately, as bad as it is, they're worried about literally being, killed, raped, like what's could happen today. And this person is worrying, does it have soy milk in it or is it regular? You know what I mean? It's like, holy crap, right?
Yeah.
So
perspective. Yeah, right.
Totally.
Travel and different experiences, they give you that perspective, So for my kids, it's going to be very important for me to give them perspective over their life, right?
So do you already bring them into a lot of different places? Are you planning on traveling a lot
they're
with
4
them?
and 5, so
Yeah.
not much we can do.
Yeah, it's still a little bit,
besides go see grandma, grandpa type of thing. But
probably wouldn't remember as much yet. You want them to like experience it, right? It's all about the memories. So.
Well, it's funny. They watch kids YouTube all the time. So
that's awesome.
It's weird. There's probably a lot of good and bad.
Oh yeah.
Because of that, but in a way, maybe they can get some perspective on life because they actually watch videos about like kids from other countries and stuff. So in a way, that is giving them a little bit of letting them see outside. Whereas when you and I grew up, there was no YouTube. There was a book, a magazine, which I remember when I was actually 12 years old. Popular Mechanics was my favorite magazine, by far. And 2 issues that stood out. One of them was the F-15E Strike Eagle. It was on there. I didn't funny, I read it. I said, that's cool. Didn't say I want to fly that.
That went into the back of your memory?
It went into my back of my mind. Maybe that's where that came from. The second one was the internet. There's this thing talking about the internet that was going to come about. And it had like this complex highway with like images on train cars traveling. And I was just like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like that's like a dumb idea. That's a dumb idea. I don't know how that's gonna happen, right? And then sure enough, now our
we don't like the internet.
Exactly, is turned upside down because
Yes, and the thing about it is YouTube is a beautiful thing. Obviously, you can be engulfed in it, but you can learn a lot, and that's one of the cool things about it. There's technology can be used in a good way and a bad way, right? Like the cell phone, for example, amazing technology, allows you to connect with people, talk with people, whatever. Same cell phone can be used in a bombing, right? Like it's just like it doesn't matter what it is; it can be used for good or bad. It's just a matter about trying to use it. So, all right. So with the business, what's the next step? Obviously, I know you and probably our same mindsets is we look forward, right? Where I can't look in the current, we always look ahead, right? And so, are you continuously growing Co-Harbor, or what's kind of you and Melissa's end goal there?
Yeah. So a couple things that we're doing with Co-Harbor Electric. It's really right now we're in their phase of perfect the operational excellence of Co-Harbor Electric. Go through everything from cradle to grave and make sure it's completely optimized.
Okay.
Not just for the fact of optimization,
right?
But the goal is it makes it better for the people that work there. Right. Nobody likes having a job where you don't know what to do, when to do it. There's no clarity. It's really difficult. It's a stress on the mind. So we're trying to make that better. At the same time, we're growing it. We're to 20 employees now.
Love it.
So, in 18 months, probably 300% growth, which is easy when you're small, and it gets harder as you're bigger. But I'd say it's a good leap. And we're just going to continue trying to serve the community, continue to growing that. It could include buying some other businesses to bring into the group to help better serve our existing customer base. But something else that I don't even know if you know about this, Andrew, but that we are doing is we have a company called Co-Harbor Russell Group.
Okay.
And it is a joint venture with a commercial construction and development company in Iowa.
Interesting.
And we bid on and build out medical clinics for the Departments of Veterans Affairs. So we have one going right now in Baraboo, Wisconsin. It's a 10,000 square foot medical facility, outpatient clinic. For them, and it's serving the veterans. They're like packed into they have a tent outside of their current building because they don't have enough space right now. So I was actually just up there this week. It's about halfway done. The building's about halfway done, but they're very excited about it because, they get more space. They get a new space. They can serve more people. They get better access to their health care. So that's something else that we're doing is kind of on the real estate development front to kind of serve veterans. So it's been very worthwhile.
Love it.
Yeah.
What do you guys do when you're not working? I mean, you guys got to have some kind of, fun. And what do you do with the family to get out? I mean, is it typical? Is it boating, golfing, different things like Naples? Or what do you guys like?
Yes, boating is something that when I get more time for, it's definitely in my future.
So much time.
Exactly. But that's boating. I love being on the water. Yeah. That's my jam. So
peaceful.
When the time allows, that's going to be a big part of my life. And other than that, it's just doing what the kids want to do, which is a lot of. Are
they into a lot of sports then right now, or at that age?
They're into gymnastics now.
Gymnastics, okay.
Yeah,
I don't have kids. I always ask this probably the stupidest questions. Like, no, Andrew, they're too young for that. I'm like, sorry,
Yeah, exactly. you always have a lot of thoughts of what you want to do with your kids.
Yeah.
And they have a different idea. And so you do what they want to do.
You're in their world, right? You're living in their world.
Yeah, exactly. But they go to First Baptist Academy, and they do gymnastics. They do a little bit of soccer and tennis. So it's really just kind of supporting them at this point,
Yeah.
which, I was never a big sports guy growing up. The one thing it does really give you is confidence,
Mm-hmm.
With my girls, I've seen as they've gotten better at sports and
Mm-hmm.
being part of that team and, upping their skill set, it's teaching them that personal mastery kind of mindset, which is good and gives them a lot of confidence. So I'm just enjoying supporting them.
Love it. Well, if you're okay with it, obviously anyone that's kind of going through that transition from military into, let's say a business or whatnot, are you comfortable with them reaching out and getting your contact information? We can put it all below. And then, maybe you have some advice for them, one-on-one, different things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to help any veteran or honestly anybody that needs help that I can help, Of course, there's a lot of other people out there that can help. They're probably more qualified than I am. But at the same time, for the military guys, I do provide a unique experience of how do you transition out of the military into the civilian and business world, and I'm happy to do that. But I would just say to them, if there is anybody that's like that, likes me, don't give up. It can be scary at times.
More scary,
not having the certainty.
More scary than the military, right? Because the military again is structured.
Yeah.
Like you get in this world and there's no one to ask. There's no one to look up to. It's you, right?
Exactly. I'll be honest. I get more anxiety in that aspect of the unknown than, okay, here's your target. It's 200 miles behind enemy lines. They're going to be shooting you on the way in, shooting you on the way out. Hit your target, get out. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
Certainty.
Done.
No problem.
Right.
But the uncertainty can be crippling sometimes. So,
Yeah.
and I know some veterans, it's hard not to veer off path. So I think it's important, like you said, get some mentors, get some other people who've been in the service who understand what you've gone through, and form that little community that can help support you.
Hey, you get the people, look up to individuals that have done it, learn from them, and obviously make mistakes and just don't give up. Just keep going. That's the moral
Absolutely.
of the story.
Don't give up.
Love it.
Sure.
Jacob, it's been a pleasure having you here on the Reg and Hard Report, and we really value what you could talk to the audience today. And you have obviously an amazing story, and you've done a lot of cool stuff in your life. And if anyone's curious, obviously we'll give your information below. But just thanks so much for coming on today.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
happy to help. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, it's
True
been
pleasure.
awesome. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.